Welcome to our mentoring circle. It's Rachel Bolton speaking, and you're here with me, a small group gathering, and so we know that means lots of people getting ready to listen to this as a self-study recording on the Achieving Organizational Health and Balance mentoring circle, with a focus on that foundational module 2 workshop, and then the work, of course, that we do working within that process. I am here co-facilitating with Birgit Williams, and before I get us into the day, Birgit, I wanted to turn it over to you to say a few words of hello.
Welcome into this mentoring circle, and we have quite a few registrants, most doing self-study. So at this point, Mariah and Elizabeth, Rachel and I, who are here in real time, this is going to be a time of probing what it is that we want to probe about achieving organizational health and balance, and in so doing, trusting that we are touching on what it is that all of you who are listening in really want to talk about.
Thank you. So to get us started today in our mentoring circle with the focus on this achieving and regenerating organizational health and balance workshop, I'm going to invite you to go to this web link to receive a card. I've pasted it into the chat. I'm also pasting it here now into the whiteboard as a clickable link. And if you click on that link, it will take you to a web page where you will have a reflection card from the Genuine Contact Ways Leadership Development Reflection Cards. Once you've got one of those cards, please give me a green check to let me know that it has opened properly in your browser. Thank you. It looks like everyone has a card chosen now. And I'm going to ask you to spend the next couple of minutes in some silent reflection on what this card conveys to you about an aspect of a healthy, balanced organization. You might choose to make some notes for yourself. You might choose to just do your silent reflection with some thinking and feeling into what this card is conveying to you about an aspect of a healthy, balanced organization. However you do that is right for you, and we'll see you here again in just a minute or two. I'm going to just pause the recording while we have this reflection time. Welcome back from your time of transferring in. If you are watching this in the self-study, you will notice that we have come back to our main circle slide and taken a moment before we turned that recording back on to put our cards into the circle so that we could see what each other had experienced. With this small group, Elizabeth is, although logged in, she's not present with us at the moment. So with this small group, we're going to stay in this collective circle while we have some transferring in time, sharing some reflections about our cards and anything else that we may care to, and see where some discussion maybe even might take us in that. I am not going to pass the bells around the circle. I'm going to put them into the center and ask that when you would like to speak, to share about your reflections, about what your card conveyed, to take those bells to you and then put them back into the center when you're finished whatever it is that you're caring to share. So I'll place those bells into the center now and invite you to share when you're ready.
Wow, I'm really eager to start sharing, and as I started reflecting on this, I realized I could sit with this card and topic probably for half an hour, and maybe have a whole, maybe this could also be a topic for the mentoring, like when we bring in the topics a little later. Because I have the card cleanse came to me, and I could immediately think of, wow, an organization where people take consciously take time for clearing out the blocks of clearing out what blocks the flow of energy between people. So like there in the veins in our body, there can be stuff that keeps the flow of blood, makes it more slowly, and to clear all the clutter that has been there from unfinished conversations or misunderstandings, or just to be aware, like, do I feel completely open-hearted with a colleague, or is there anything in the way that makes us a less great team than what we could be? So taking care of that. Also cleansing out what isn't important anymore, really regularly looking at projects or activities that were once started but are probably stuck, or there's either something missing, or it's time to say, wow, that was a good idea at the beginning, but as nature also has many seeds and not all the seeds grow into a tree, not all project ideas are supposed to become something manifest. So to look at that regularly. And I was wondering, like the daily cleansing that we do for the body, the showering in the morning or brushing teeth and so on, what could that be on an organizational level? Like the daily cleansing. One thing that is available to me right away is really to have it as part of a team, to say before we start a meeting or before we start the day, let's sit in silent meditation, and that can be, depending on one's needs, can be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, or just one. But really this cleansing one's beingness. I've picked up a meditation routine, and this several months ago, and this makes such a difference in my life. And this teacher, Emily Fletcher, she talks about that at some point it may become as rude to go out into the world and meet other people without having meditated, without having calmed one's mind, as it is rude to go out and meet others without having brushed our teeth. And I like that metaphor a lot. And the last thing, so also the end of the day cleansing, like what do I do before I go to bed to make it, to cleanse myself, and what does that mean at a workplace? So I'm like, I want to go out and have a conversation about this question right away with people at work. This is I love the way you built that question, Rachel, and it made me so aware of how powerful the quality of the question is that comes along with the card. So I want to become more aware of that again for myself. I loved your question. And I'm very curious to hear what all of you have also found. Belzbeck.
Rachel picking up as a participant in our transferring in with my card, which was communication. And Mariah, first I do have to say that it was Birgit who came up with that question. So yes, the question is important, and she is the one who, I have genius in that also, but this one was her genius. So I just want to be really transparent about that. As part of my very clear, transparent communication, I was thinking about how important communication is in any organization of people. Clear, transparent, explicit communication, and how that is such a marker of health and balance for me. Is it safe and easy and welcome and I don't know what else, safe and easy and welcome at least, for there to be clear, honest, transparent communication? Are we hiding things in our communication? Are we not communicating things for fear of some kind of reaction? It's when I was looking at it, I was thinking about what a barometer it is, an ability to test how healthy and balanced is the organization based on how communication happens. And also how sometimes communication or lack thereof can create some challenges, and how important it is to think through communication as part of being in a healthy and balanced organization. What does need to be communicated? When and how does it need to be communicated? Who does it get communicated with? Those are all really important questions that I feel like need to be actively in the awareness of any organization of people as an aspect of looking after health and balance. So those were some of my reflections as I was looking at this card and thinking about communication. And yeah, that's what I will offer at this time. I'll put the object back.
Thank you both so much. I enjoyed listening to you, and I was taking some notes as you were speaking. And I also liked the idea that with these cards, we could each spend a long time with note making and reflecting on our own cards. I find that to be true, and I always say to myself, Birgit, make sure you go into these cards every day, because I always learn something about what I'm thinking about that ends up feeling important to me. So I received genuine contact with the collective, and what I did with that was I thought, okay, collective hearts, collective minds, collective intelligence, collective intuition. And then I put the word benefit. What is the benefit that actually happens when a group of people are in genuine contact with each other, heart to heart, mind to mind, heart with heart, mind with mind, intelligence of all kinds, including intuitive intelligence, which we all have. And I am pretty much for my whole life on a quest about helping people to unleash their potential. And of course, I am a firm believer that the potential of people, when fully expressed, is going to be life nurturing. It's going to be beneficial. It's going to be something that helps us evolve. I don't think that the full potential of people is going to take us into dark places and that which is harmful. I think people's inherent potential is very good and very life nurturing. So when all of that comes together, then it is a big help to close that gap between potential and results, which I'm always interested in reducing that gap. So with any group that I've worked with, I'm interested in reducing that gap. I see their potential. I believe that if they make genuine contact with the collective, that they will start to see their own potential differently. So that was pretty important. But then what I started thinking about was, for years, people like myself have advocated for participative methods for meetings. I advocate for being invitational, for people to show up with as much genuine contact as they can. I think multidisciplinary teams are important, but then I put for myself this question: why is that important? And it's important for so many reasons, all in relation to the human spirit. And as we end up in a world that makes more and more use of artificial intelligence, not only for data of the past, but also for prediction. And not only for prediction, but for the purpose of putting out false facts, and even not just artificial intelligence, but we are increasingly in a world with false information showing up, including in the form of pictures that look like they're real, that look like they've been taken of real people. And I think the biggest way that we are going to be able to see ourselves through is through the spirit of the collective of people that comes together in an organization to achieve a purpose, and that through being in genuine contact with the collective, that we end up, through all that intelligence coming together, we end up as an organization finding our way forward, finding our way to accomplish the vision, finding our way to do what it is that we really want to accomplish, no matter what the world seems to be conveying to us as truth. And quite exactly what that has to do with organizational health and balance is something I'm still working out. But where I'm out with this is viewing organizational health and balance as really as having to have an aspect where the people in the organization, through their genuine contact with the collective, end up in a state of trust that ultimately they're going to find their way, that they have the blueprint within the organization for its health and balance, that they have within it the common desire to be successful, like for the organization to be successful. And that can only come from genuine contact with the collective. Now, if only when I sit down to write about these things it came as easily as when I speak them, I would be most grateful. So that's it for me.
It is possible that our time for our transfer in is done. I know now that we have been listening to each other, though, that some thoughts and things might be percolating. So if there are any final reflections that are coming up for you, please do go ahead and share them. And if you are feeling complete in our transfer in, please just give me a green check to let me know.
I just had one more thing I wanted to add, because as I sat here and I thought this topic about collective intelligence, organizational health and balance feels so big and can feel abstract. And I just sat here looking at my computer screen. There's these beautiful pictures of each of the three of us, all with smiles. We each chose a card, and that was done, so quickly. We spent 2 minutes reflecting on that card, and then I know as each of you spoke, I was taking notes of things that you said that felt important to me. And then even my own notes is like having some thoughts that I maybe didn't articulate in that way before. And then the whole package of what just happened in this transfer in was just such a beautiful demonstration to me of collective intelligence, of genuine contact with the collective. And I thought how easy it is to tap into that if we set the conditions up right. It doesn't need to be complicated. It doesn't need to be abstract. We've just demonstrated right now how that can come into play quite quickly. So thank you for that. Now I'm going to put the bells back in the center. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the reflections. And I was having my own thoughts about how simply these things can be done, but also how each of us had these very different kinds of cards with very different kinds of thoughts. And yet every time as I was listening, I was thinking, yep, that too. So it was I feel like we've already started to create this beautiful picture this morning, or this afternoon, or whatever time it may be for you. So having come through this rich conversation in our transfer in, I am going to turn it over now to Birgit for a few contextual considerations. That's a bit of a mouthful and a tongue twister for today, about achieving and regenerating organizational health and balance. Over to you.
Thanks, Rachel. Contextual considerations was easier to write than speak. Before we head into looking at our hopes and fears, I wanted to add these points just to place a context for us as we explore what we want to about achieving organizational health and balance. Diagnosis done in participatory, transparent ways, such as what we teach in this module, initiate change during the diagnosis process. It cannot be stopped, and we don't want to stop it. So that is a contextual consideration, is we can't just call it diagnosis as a fixed point and then regeneration. Like change already starts happening as people's awareness increases of what is so. The second contextual point is that diagnosis and a regeneration plan can be an intentional early step of a much bigger organizational change effort. And so, although we look at what is taught in this module as, okay, we can help an organization, a team, or even a family do a diagnosis and a regeneration plan, we can also take this module and place it as a significant part, as an early step in a bigger organizational change effort. And the third contextual consideration that I wanted us to have a chance to have behind the scenes is that from my perspective, organizational change cannot be successfully accomplished without participatory diagnosis and collaborative development of a regeneration plan. And what I mean by that is there is in the industry of organizational change lots of evidence of failure of organizational change. And a lot of that failure happens because somebody somewhere comes up with a diagnosis and then a report is generated. Then somebody somewhere comes up with a regeneration plan, and a report is generated. And then there's this huge work, which doesn't work well, of attempting to align people behind the change. And there's lots of evidence that it doesn't work. So the third consideration here is, and I could put it in the positive, organizational change can be successfully accomplished. And a big step in that is participatory diagnosis and collaborative development of a regeneration plan. And I had that in place as something. Go ahead.
To the chart from before. So there's one thing that I will take from this chart into our topics, but I don't remember what a regeneration plan is. I don't know if that's in the organizational health and balance model module workshop. I sit in front of this. So there are two things happening. One is that the whole last sentence to me is so condensed. I believe I know what you mean with that, but I'm just thinking of people who are not so enmeshed in this topic and like dealing with such a sentence. Really interesting. But I don't get a picture of regeneration plan. So could you help me out with that, and maybe others who are listening later too?
Sure. All right. Thank you for asking. When in this module, there's the phase of diagnosis, and then once all the diagnostic pieces are done, then a plan gets developed for how to bring the organization into improved health and balance. And it was called a regeneration plan because we assume that the blueprint for health and balance is inside of the system, that it once at some point early on was healthy and balanced. So it's not that we have to create health and balance, we have to regenerate it. And generation implies action, generative action, and the re in front of it implies to do it again, so to regenerate that health and balance at whatever stage the organization is in. So that word was quite deliberately chosen as implying that this ability is in the organization, and it just has to find its way again. Is that easier to understand?
Yes, thank you very much. I now understand, and I will take it forward into later. Thanks, Birgit.
Yes, and in this module, when you go back into the workbook, you will notice that we frame the regeneration plan within the medicine wheel tool and within the Deep Essence tool as the two best tools for the framing of that regeneration plan. And then, yes, Mariah, that last sentence, which is quite a mouthful, is something to go back to. It's very much, these three sentences that are here are very much interrelated. And there are people who quest all the time about how to successfully accomplish change. And I am putting forward as a contextual consideration that this change can't be successfully accomplished unless there's lots of participation with figuring out what needs to be changed, called diagnosis, and then collaborating together to develop some kind of plan. And that's very much about people being involved along the way, instead of somebody putting all this together, such as consultants, and then trying to sell the plan, something I have never, ever witnessed as working. So hopefully that's something of food for thought. And we're heading into this segment on hopes and fears. And this is about hopes and fears for working with organizational health and balance. And you possibly know that even approaching an organization to say, hey, here's what needs to happen, organizational health and balance, before you start looking at some other things, that is often not accepted as a worthy business proposition. And so it's easy to have hopes and fears relating to working with organizational health and balance. And I would like you to take 10 minutes, please, and during those 10 minutes to quietly get in touch with your own hopes and fears about working with organizational health and balance. And then looking at your own writing about hopes and fears, if you've written it down, and to come up with one major hope and one major fear that seems to be underlying those hopes and fears. So usually when we have hopes, there's something under that is a big hope that fuels all those hopes. And there's something under the fears that's a bigger fear that fuels all those fears. So I thought, let's do some personal reflection. And when we come back, I'm going to have a whiteboard up on the screen. And please, in 10 minutes, come back and write down, each of us, write down just the one big hope and the one big fear that we have each personally been able to identify. And hopefully this 10 minutes gives you time for a very quick break if you need it. You are welcome back after that 10 minutes to get in touch with what the biggest hope is, the biggest fear, or that which underlies the hopes and fears. And we've been joined by Sweta. I would love to hear how you say your name, and so at any point that you would like to actually in the chat window, maybe you can type whether or not you're able to hear now that you've done the audio wizard. So for Mariah and Rachel, this is a chance for you to share the hope that you came up with that underlies the rest of your hopes for working with organizational health and balance, and the fear that underlies any fears that you're having about organizational health and balance. And I've got my own to share as well. And Sweta, if you feel free to join in the conversation anyway, indicate by hitting the talk button that you want to speak up, and then when you're done, just hit that talk button again to put your mic down. Okay, any of you, please go ahead to share the hopes and fears.
Okay, I can start. I do want to share some of the hopes and fears that I first jotted down that led me to this bigger thing. So the first fears that came were like there will be no buy-in, I'm not able to make it a business case, people don't want to know, people want to keep doing what they've done before, and people are not taking time for their personal health and balance, let alone for the organizational health and balance. And it was beautiful that you asked, so what is the deeper hope and fear? Because after writing this list out, suddenly it shifted and was like, woo! It came up the question, do I first need to be in perfect health and balance to offer this topic? So that's a thought pattern that you know from me. I had something similar last week, like this idea of, do I need to be a perfect model of something to, like the doctor who needs to be perfectly healthy to be allowed to be a doctor. And then it led me to, wow, is this actually a topic I'm really passionate about, health and balance in organizations? And there are 3 questions I've learned from a beautiful female entrepreneur, Miki Agrawal, and I'm going to put them in here. I see if, okay, let me see if I can do to make it better readable. So her question, she's now started 4 businesses, very fascinating woman. And the question that she's asking is, what sucks in my world, before she does anything business-wise, does it suck for a lot of people? And can I be passionate about this issue across our community for a really long time? So I was like, woo, where is the aspect? And that's like my hope, also for this mentoring circle and in general for working with organizational health and balance. Finding the part that gets me really fired up, that well, I want to keep going, and I don't mind if people don't buy it right away, but I'm so motivated that I just keep it going. And I do believe that now is the time that there is much more awareness around also personal health and balance. I love how the body is such a beautiful, easy, and understandable metaphor to use, and that more and more people have understanding and knowledge about the body. Yeah, and again, I think I now have 3 topics for when we post topics that came up in the different exercises. So it's very beautiful. Thank you. Mike back.
Rachel picking up. I was watching my hopes and fears doing a little dance on the screen, so I feel like it's my turn to talk. And a little bit of a cha-cha-cha is how it felt in that moment. My big hope was about health and balance being the norm rather than the exception. That this is just such a thing that of course it's normal to talk about it, of course it's normal to work with, and of course we collectively in all of our organizations of people, from families right on up to great big huge international organizations, are working with health and balance because it is so integral to everything. And on the fear side, it's maybe the opposite of that, which is like this sense of like nothing ever changes. No matter what we might do, we just keep reverting back to these less life-nurturing kinds of things. So those were my 2 that I am adding into our hopes and fears about organizational health and balance. And while I've got the mic, Shweta, I wonder if you might just at least turn on your mic to talk so that we know that you're there and connected. And I know you can hear us, but I would love to know that we can hear you as well. And if you need some help doing that, if you can't, it's just the talk button is all you have to do. There you go.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So for me, the hope, which kind of is a follow-up to what Rachel was talking, that there should be enough focus on organizational health and balance within organizations, which I don't see happening that often. And my fear is organizational health is also intertwined with employees' health and balance. So how do you kind of work with these two things together?
Shweta, thank you so much, and please do, this is Birgit, please do tell us how to say your name so that we can be respectful and get it right.
Shweta.
Shweta. Thank you so much. Okay, and I wrote down as you were speaking to capture it on the whiteboard. Hope I got it right. My own hope, and I became very fascinated with the fact that even though I gave the question about hopes and fears, I didn't actually answer the question, which has got me sitting here thinking, this is very interesting, Birgit. The hope that I came up with was that it's similar to what you've all said, that it's common for organizational health and balance to be welcomed and normal. And maybe that's increasing today. My fear is that discussions of organizational health and balance always require exhausting conversations to make the case of the importance to business of organizational health and balance. So I personally don't have any challenge being fired up about this topic. I am very fired up about it, but my fear is the continued exhaustion trying to make the case for business. And then as you were each speaking, and as I looked at what I'd written, I thought, Birgit, you haven't for yourself actually answered the question, what is my own hope for working with organizational health and balance to make this even more personal for me? What is my own fear? And because, yes, my fear is maybe exhaustion, but it's different than that. So I am going to need to take this away as homework, because I find that the hope I've shared and the fear I've shared are too general. They're not specific enough of what is my real underlying hope. Yes, of course, I hope that organizational health and balance is going to be welcomed and normal. But what's my hope for myself in working with this? So I've got to work at that. And I'm kind of intrigued with the fact that I personally kept my answers more general. So that's something I want to look at for myself. Now, in just a moment, we are going to work from having done these hopes and fears and build a topic agenda that will carry us for the rest of this mentoring circle. But before I do so, I want to put my mic down to find out if there's any reflections or insights that any of you want to share before we go on. And if there's nothing that you want to share, please give a green check mark to show that you're ready to go on. But I do want to give you the space just in case.
It does seem to me as if I've heard several of us expressing that we kind of expect that the topic isn't really welcome or welcomed within organizations. And I find that interesting, and I will put something on the agenda regarding, how, if it's a wording thing, or what is it that could make us change our expectation into, and then also our experience into this topic being welcomed in organizations.
Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you to help us to identify the topics that are showing up that we really want to discuss.
Thank you. It is time now for creating our agenda. Elizabeth, perfect timing. Welcome into our group together. It is a time for posting of topics that you have the passion and inspiration to bring into this group for some conversation today around the Genuine Contact Foundational Module, working on achieving and regenerating organizational health and balance. If you already know what your topics are, you can please feel free to start typing as I am talking. I am curious to see what those topics might be. Your topics can be any issue, opportunity, question, anything that you might have that feels important to have some conversation on around at this time about achieving and regenerating organizational health and balance. The workshop itself, the work of implementing what you have learned in that workshop, anything that you came into today with in yourself as some inquiry, anything that's been stirred in you through our transfer in and our hopes and fears today. It is time now to post those topics. Please feel free to type as I am talking if you wish. When you post a topic, I'm going to ask you to do three things. I'm going to ask you to write your topic, a brief title for that topic. That is number one. Number two is to include your name when you write it so that we know who it is that's bringing up this topic. And number three is to be willing, when it is the time for your topic to be talked about, that you say a few words of introduction at that time to get the conversation started, to be the leader of that particular conversation within this mentoring circle. There will be a whiteboard which all of us can take notes on, so you won't be responsible for anything other than getting that topic started. And I realize that there is a fourth thing that I would like for you to do as you are posting those topics to our agenda, and that is to also say a few words of introduction so that at this time, while we're creating the agenda, we know what it is that you're intending to talk about. When you make that introduction, so you can either choose to write your topic first and then say some words about it second, or you can pick up your mic and speak about your topic first and then write down the topic second, whichever you prefer. When you are speaking, however, I'm going to ask you to just limit it to a sentence or two to give us a very brief overview of what the topic is. You'll have time for a more in-depth introduction when you are opening up the discussion around this topic in a little while. So please go ahead and write any topics on our agenda that you may have at this time. Make sure that you include your name and also speak a few words about that topic. When you are feeling complete in the things that you would like to contribute to the agenda, if there is anything, there is no requirement to post a topic, of course. Just put a green check mark in the participant window so that we know that everyone is done with the topics they would like to post for today.
All right, here I start us off. So I'm interested in having a conversation where we can together explore individually what is the aspect of that larger topic, organizational health and balance, that each of us is truly passionate about. So I'm not passionate in my life to talk about health and balance. For me, that's more like a means to something else that I'm passionate about. So when I think of I want to be health and balance, yes, so that then something else becomes possible. And this so that that is for me more an energy source to stand up for this topic than the health and balance itself. And yeah, I would love for each of us to connect deeper, if we so want to, what our specific part of this is that we may want to stand for. I'm quick and I jump in again. I see there are others writing, but I'm ready to speak out again. The second topic is I listened to a talk today by Marianne Williamson, and at several times over the last years I've heard the metaphor of cancer being used. So like ego being like a cancer to an organism, or does the organization have cancer? And using the cancer metaphor as something is going wrong in an organization. And I'm aware that there's a book by Andreas Moritz saying cancer is not an illness, it's a survival mechanism. So that cancer cells are being built within a body actually to keep it in health and balance, because it would, without the cancer, collapse even before. So I don't know if this is interesting to anyone else. So if that would be the case, I'd love to have a conversation about using the cancer metaphor and what do we perceive that is happening in organizations that can be seen that is actually something to keep the balance of the organization, but is seen within the organization as cancer and as like something going wrong.
It's Birgit. The topic that I posted is in situations of power and control dynamics, how to accomplish organizational health and balance, and to what benefit would that be if we did the work of organizational health and balance in situations of power and control dynamics.
So I don't see any typing, and I don't hear anything, and I don't see any green checks. It may be that you're all still deep in your contemplation about the agenda. If you're feeling complete with it, however, please do remember to just put up a green check next to your name so that we know you have nothing more to add to what we'll be talking about today.
I put up the topic, with preciousness of a participatory approach to organizational health and balance, and to collaborating on the regeneration plan so that everyone is in, as a topic that is quite precious and certainly precious to me.
I'm laughing at myself, so I have another one. And that is, I just realized that it does something different in me when I think of healthy organizations compared to health and balance in organizations. There's a shift in my nervous system and something delightful happening. And also when I look at the word change, that doesn't do it for me much, but evolution or transformation does a lot for me. So I'm always interested to have a conversation about what wording we use and what wording brings up what kind of vibration, and what wording is also a wording that other people will, or those that we wish to work for, will relate to best. Which makes it 3 topics by me, and I'm happy to let the last one go and just have it as a like internal question that I just have in the background, and bring that into my first 2 topics as well.
For me, open communication is often said as the base for maintaining organizational health and balance. However, in organizations which are hierarchy oriented, and organizations means hierarchy in 99% of the cases, how is it realistic to think open communication is possible? And sorry, I'm not able to write, so yeah.
So it looks like we are all complete with our topics. We have 6 topics and about an hour and 15 minutes left. In this small group, I'm thinking that if we agree to spend about 10 minutes on each of these topics, that we can probably manage together to work our way through them as a bigger group rather than breaking out into small groups for breakout discussions. So I am going to suggest that we go ahead that way with this. And I wonder if, I'm just thinking about the order of them. If anyone has any particular, like, oh, here's what we might do first, or how we might organize these, please feel free to speak up and help us to co-create the agenda even further in that way. Otherwise, I'm just going to take a look at them and put them in an order on my own, and then we'll head into the first conversation in just a moment.
Lorraine here. So in terms of 6 topics, I'm really willing to let go of my 3rd one, which makes it 5, and have the 3rd one just like going on in the background. And I would love to actually start with taking it really to us personally. So what is the aspect that each of us is truly passionate about within that topic, and then go to the other topics.
Thanks, Marai. If you wanted to take that topic away that you've added, just so that we can make sure that that I know which one we're talking about, that would be great.
Rachel, aside from Marai's request to begin with that personal one, you just go ahead and sort out the order and we'll all just follow along. It's fine.
Okay, I'm going to bring us up onto a whiteboard and add the topic. Marai, I'm going to ask you to say a few words to introduce the topic, and then I will, while she's doing that, be setting a timer. When the timer goes off, it does not mean we must stop speaking at exactly that second. It's just to help us all keep an eye on how much time we are choosing together to have as part of this conversation. So if the conversation comes to an end before the timer does, we'll move on to the next one. If it's not right for it to finish when the timer goes off, we can spend some more minutes until it feels like a natural conclusion of the conversation. And I know that we will somehow work through everything within that. So over to you, Marai, to get us started in this topic.
Yeah. So I said some of it before. The key is we could speak about something like from a broader speaking about it perspective, which could also be a conversation very much in the thinking. And I for myself want to take this really close inside of me. Like, what is the part that is connected to my own purpose, to where my own energy and passion is? And I would also love to hear what is the part, if for everyone who feels like sharing it, what is the part of this topic that you are aware of, wow, this is really dear to your heart or connected to your purpose and to your path? Because I believe that addressing it from there has so much more energy. I know I've chosen in my life to not go mainly into health. So as a child, I thought I would become a doctor, and later on, becoming a doctor wasn't interesting anymore. When I looked at becoming a facilitator or looked at psychology, I realized I don't want to be a therapist. I'm not wanting to primarily work with people who are in crisis or who are in a very low level of energy. And I see huge benefit in other people choosing to do that. I didn't choose that. I'm interested in something else. So for me, for example, thinking about, would organizational fitness be a topic that does it for me more than organizational health and balance? And I don't have a yes to that, but it's just a wondering what is like the key entry point that then also relates to that kind of organization that each one of us is especially interested in working with. That is meaningful. I hope this was understandable, and I stop right here.
Hi, everybody. This is Elizabeth picking the object, and I thought, wow, from the moment you wrote this, Marai, I was thinking, interesting. Because what comes to me from this workshop is what a great way it is of helping organizations realize where they are at any given time. It's kind of more than a healing process, which it can be. Of course, it's also a regeneration process. It's an easy way. I mean, it shows us the steps we can take to help organizations realize where they are at any time, and if they are healthy or not, how they are feeling as people. And I don't really see myself as a therapist, and just thinking about what you just said, but more as somebody that's holding a lantern and helping them. Also, this is what you're saying, this is what's showing up, this is what's happening, and the decision to do whatever you need to do is always yours, no? So I think that the whole process, even having an open space or whatever at the end or in the middle of the diagnosis, is exactly what we do. So I see this workshop or this part of the program as a way of teaching us how we can help organizations see what they need or don't need. That's what comes to me. Thank you.
This is Rachel picking up, and I don't know if I kind of heard that assumption truly as Mariah was talking about this in the introduction, but it's like this for me goes back to that what I was talking about in my hopes at the beginning, that this is so, that talking about health and balance is so normal, that making space for health and balance is so normal, that it's not just, oh, this organization is in crisis, it needs some kind of intervention, but that this is really something that is so understood and so necessary. You know, the best time to think about your personal health is not when you're sick. The best time to think about your personal health is when you are healthy. And I think that that's true about organizational health and balance too. The best time to be working in an organization around their health and balance is when they're healthy. When it's that little, like, oh, tiny pain in your toe that, you know, you need to do some stretching, or, you know, whatever it is, whatever the organizational equivalent of that is, that you're always taking care to be in the best of health. And that's the thing that really is passionate for me, is creating that as such a, of course this is what we do. Of course we look after our personal health. Of course we take time to exercise and sleep and do all of those things around self-care that are really nourishing and really self-loving, and that is true in our organizations too. Of course we take time in our organizations to be in health, to be in balance, to be conscious of that in all the aspects of what we're doing. So that's some of my passion around this, is just holding that picture steady, that this is something that's a critical ingredient in all organizations. Like back.
It's Birgit, and I wrote my points there, and that which is causes me to feel passionate about this is the last point I put, which is about stopping the downward spiral into that which is life-depleting and more life-depleting that I witness around me, where it gets into life-depleting, and more life depleting, and people just, they know that they would like to stop it, but they don't know how to stop that spiral. And using the organizational health and balance, using this module into that which is reclaims life and life force and shifts to the upward, or what I prefer to call the expansive spiral of life force at its best. And I'm deeply, deeply committed to that. The second point that I put was not actually an answer to your question, Marai, but as my response to words like organizational fitness. I found myself reacting to that phrase as in a nope, don't want to go there. I've heard that phrase before as very desirable, but here's what it did for me. I think organizational health and balance, even if that's awkward and possibly really awkward to translate it into German, but for me, the concept is more important than the words. The concept focuses in the present, and it focuses in the belief that the organism has within itself what is needed to be in that health and balance, whatever we call it, in whatever culture we're in. But it's not something that is, I don't think it's helpful if the words and concepts push it into the future like something to strive for, or a goal that might feel like an unattainable goal. Now, when I think of organizational fitness, I think of it as pushed into the future as something to strive for, instead of assuming that there is already fitness. Now, that could just be me and my perspective. I'm using my concepts and my use of English words. So whatever words might work best in a different language, of course, that's what you need to go with. But I think that the main point I'm making here is to keep it into the present. It's like on a personal level, when we give gratitude for something as though it already exists in the present, that is different than making a goal for something that we're pushing into the future. And I increasingly believe that it's very important to keep things into the present. My words might not be quite what I'm wanting to convey here, but hopefully I'm conveying the sentiment. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Birgit. I'm aware that the timer went off, and I just want to add one more comment, and then we can look at if we want to go to the next session. I'm grateful for what you said, because I wrote it as a question, like, is it organizational fitness? But immediately I also didn't have the, oh yes, that's it. It was more like brainstorming, okay, that's not it yet, so started and like searching. And what I'm aware of is that aliveness really does it for me. And that this idea of having something that in the moment can be acknowledged, is it here now, or in this moment, is it there or is it not there? Are we plugged in? Are we not plugged in? Is life force flowing, or is life force becoming less, or is it becoming more? How strong are we plugged into with life force? That's something that that I can beautifully take forward. So I'm good to continue to the next topic if everybody else is too. And I'm going to do it with a green check mark.
So as Mariah has shown, that clearly you've been in enough of these with me. If you're feeling complete in this topic, please give me a green check to let me know. Otherwise, we will wait and let those final thoughts percolate. Okay, that is everyone. Thank you. I'm going to come back to our agenda. I'm going to skip over for right at the moment Shweta's topic because I see that she's dropped out. She just said that she was going to restart. That was a few minutes ago. So to give her some time to come back into this, I'm going to skip over that one for now and then come back to it. And that means that in a moment, I am going to bring up another whiteboard and paste our next topic, which is also Mariah's. Oh, I love how this has all worked for me, just as I wanted it to. So over to you, Mariah, again, to lead us into this topic, and we'll see how we get on with it.
Thank you, Rachel. So what I'm interested in is using a symptom, like, let me start over again. For many, many years, I've been hesitant to identify and like really poke on pain points for people. And at the same time, I know that in marketing, that is one of the things that is being said is useful to really acknowledge, wow, there's something that really pains you. If you stop ignoring that, but allow to become aware of it, there's a real pain point. So what are real pain points in organizations? And where is it that within an organization they may say, ooh, like this person, this team, this behavior, that symptom, that's like cancer, and if we just could get rid of it, like in Western medicine, like if we could just cut it out and yeah, do whatever to have this wrongness out of the body, then the organization is going to be healthy again. And with a holistic approach to healing of the body, there's a different perspective on cancer cells. And Andreas Moritz, I think, who maybe some of you even know in person, has this book about cancer is not an illness, it's a survival mechanism, that it's actually something that the body produces to keep itself in balance longer because it would collapse if it wouldn't produce the cancer. So the cancer is actually it's kind of like well intended within the body. And what is it that we could identify within an organization as something to talk about that people may see as, oh, this is something we want to get rid of. And if we could help them see, oh, this is not something to get rid of, but to change the perspective and harvest a treasure that is showing in that symptom. Yeah, I'm thinking about how to have a conversation about the health and balance topic in a different way. So I'm curious if anyone can relate to this topic I'm posting here. Yeah, and I will shut my mic and listen to what you have to say here. Oh, and one last thing. So, for example, conflict could be seen as something that is like, oh, there's something happening that we don't want, but maybe this is actually a really beautiful thing pointing to a need for a higher level of integratedness and a higher level of health and balance.
Mariah, I listened to everything you said, and I'm not actually clear of what you're asking. And so the one question I would ask back is, why, of all the possible metaphors, why would cancer be the right metaphor? Because societally, it is still, as soon as someone is diagnosed with cancer, there's a great deal of fear that is associated with that word. And it might take many, many decades before there is not fear associated with that word. So I wonder if there's a different metaphor. I think that what you are saying is that sometimes when there's something like, for example, like conflict, it actually is a healthy aspect in an organization. I think that those are concepts that are difficult for a lot of people to grasp. So I'm wondering what you're really asking here. And I'm actually commenting that the more complex and difficult that we make these points into something that's outside of the societal norm of belief, that we have such a job of education on our hands that it's like, instead of one quick step or maybe two towards health, like the concepts of health and balance, we end up by adding some of these thoughts to needing people to follow our thoughts in 4 or 5 steps, and that can be challenging, I think.
I'm picking the object, and maybe I can understand Marai, this concept about, because I do constellations, and also I've had some contact with other therapies that also take illnesses as great possibilities to heal, and to heal at other levels. So what comes to me is that even though we know that this can happen when we refer to organizations, I'm not so sure, it is important to see what's not working. And just going back to the previous workshop, to the past, organizational health and balance, and realizing that we need to clean before we start doing anything else. And I think that an illness is important because it helps us see the type of life we're leading and the changes we could make, or the transformation we could make in our lives to be in a better place, maybe, or maybe just live with our disease. I don't know. But it's definitely maybe not an illness, but a dis-ease. So we are not really comfortable in our own skin when we have cancer. It's not easy to be in pain. So it is important to see the pain and then see what we want to do with that. So that's what comes to me. And regarding organizations, I think it's important to see what is, and then make decisions around that. I don't know if this helps, but that's what came to me when you talked about this. Thank you.
Oh, Birgit, you seem to be... I'm not sure what's happening. I see Birgit's mic on or not. So thank you for both your contributions. It seems that this is a topic that is circulating within me, and I will just be with it some more. Maybe a way of speaking about it is like, what are early symptoms that it would be really, as Rachel, as you said before, like, oh, my toe is aching, and where does it does it point me towards stretching so that I don't end up by ignoring this little symptom when I don't ignore it, but use it early on to look after my health and balance, and it can then prevent larger illnesses like cancer being developed over years. So I hear the part of not using something that is repelling to people or that would need a lot of education in many different ways. Thanks for that. It seems to me as if we were in an open space meeting, this topic just doesn't have that much energy for everybody. So yeah, the time is up anyhow. I suggest we go to the next topic.
Before we do go on, I just want to check and see with everyone else if you are also feeling complete. Please give me a green check.
For me, it's I'll give a green check because I think I'm complete for right now, but I would love at some future time for Marai to come back around with your thinking about this.
Okay, thank you everyone for those contributions. We are going to keep working our way through, so I'm going to be turning it over to Birgit for this topic about situations of power and control dynamics as our next topic for today. So over to you.
Thank you. There are many situations in many countries in which there are lots of power and control dynamics in organizations as the way of operating. And maybe culturally, those power and control dynamics have existed for a very, very long time. And it's, you know, some of us wish that those patterns could be broken for all sorts of reasons. But my question here is very much around in situations of power and control dynamics, not just from a hierarchy, but there are power and control dynamics throughout an organization that are often surprising to discover. How do we accomplish organizational health and balance, and to what benefit when those dynamics exist? Rachel, your mic's on, by the way. And what I'm thinking of, I'm actually going to give a case example. We were working in a city government, and in that particular city in the United States, 80% of the people there are African American, and 20% of the people in the city and in the government office we were working in were either white or Hispanic or from some other background. And when we were brought into the organization, we were told that probably because the director was white, that the director was using power and control dynamics, and that was what was keeping the organization from underperforming. And he had been in that position for 4 years. And we came to discover that the power and control dynamics that he was using were not really evident. There was not, he was just using some of the normal power dynamics dynamics from his position in the hierarchy, but we did not discover, nor were people actually saying that he was misusing those or attempting to over-control. But what was happening was throughout all sorts of parts of that organization, and it took us quite a while to uncover this. And it turned out some really savvy young people were the ones who ended up sharing this information with us. The power dynamics were within the African American community there, and some of the power dynamics were occurring because different people belonged to different churches, different faith beliefs. And so these different faith beliefs within the place of employment were having these power and control dynamics with each other as well. There were some people who felt strongly that if you had a white boss, that any worker attempting to do their job was doing so for the white person. And what was happening was the power and control dynamics in the organization were taking over, where people who were trying to do their job were being ostracized by other people in the African American community. And once we got to the bottom of that, we started having different conversations and were able to help that group of people. There was about 600 people to start to sort out, did they want organizational health and balance? And then they started working towards that. So that's just a story example. So I didn't want you to think it was just power and control dynamics from a hierarchy could take place anywhere within the organization. So what are your thoughts as I speak about this? How would you go about accomplishing organizational health and balance if there are these power dynamics? And what benefit does it actually have in such a situation to accomplish organizational health and balance?
Very good. Thank you for this topic and the explanation, the example. I was just thinking how clear, I don't know the answer, by the way, but I was just wondering how clear is the intention of the organization, are the givens in the organization, how well are they communicated, and is everybody clear about the blueprint of health and balance of that organization? How do they know what it is to be in health and balance? Yeah. Those are my thoughts around this. I really don't know. It's kind of like, wow, what a complicated question. And I can see all those power dynamics going on in the organization and controlling. And it's very strange, like there's this supposed to be control or this supposed hierarchy in an organization. But at the same time, there are these groups that can take control and somehow maybe disrupt, or maybe not, or maybe that's just informal organization working within the formal organization, no? And maybe it works. So I think maybe there isn't. I don't find a straight answer to this. like there's always these informal leaders within the organizations that somehow make things work. So yeah, I'll just leave it there. Thank you. I like the thought process though.
It struck me as I was listening to the story that there were these moments of like health imbalance coming to the surface, like when those savvy young people, as you called them, finally said, like, here's where the power thing really is going on. That's this moment of like great clarity and looking maybe for the first time at what is the challenge here. And yet, likely, although you didn't elaborate on it, there could have been some repercussions for being the ones who were speaking in that way from that power center, which might create further dis-ease in the organization. So it's like, I don't know whether or not it is possible to actually really accomplish organizational health and balance in a more life-depleting climate, but at least those conversations are starting, and it can be starting to be in the awareness in those moments. And sometimes it might be one of those cases of like you never know what impact those conversations might have on the organization as a whole, and perhaps also on the people within it. And then I have some thoughts also that I'm thinking about in terms of I have lots of thoughts actually. I don't know. I have lost my train of thought. So I will put the mic back and see if anyone has any more thoughts that you would like to add to this topic at this time, or if you're feeling complete in it, please do give me a green check.
Rachel, I loved when you identified those moments of health and balance within that case example I gave. And that were those moments, and there was more clarity, and in those moments of greater clarity, it got clearer of like the need to ask the question, what is the challenge here? And that already starts something moving. And I think, and not just that example, but other examples, absolutely there can be repercussions when people speak up, as there was to some of those young people. In this case, the person at the helm of the hierarchy, the director, was very clear about the givens, very clear about the intention of the organization, very clear about communicating the givens, very clear about what he was able to state with lots of coaching from us about the blueprint for organizational health and balance. And he was very clear that he would do everything within his power to reduce any repercussions, at least within the confines of the organization itself. So I found it, both Ord and I found it such a breath of fresh air to work with such an amazing director. And he had inherited a very life-depleting organization of Figlander people that he had been unable to make any breakthroughs in. So this identification that you had about these moments of health and balance coming to the surface were greater breakthroughs than he had had in 4 years of making lots of attempts. So that made it worthwhile right there. I think at that point it becomes up to the people who might be facing the repercussions. Does their desire for a more life-nurturing organization in which they can really do their jobs outweigh their fear of repercussions? And it's my conclusion that this module, organizational health and balance, has within it the ingredients, depending on how they're applied, and going very, very slowly to start with, to actually unblock some of what's blocked, and for people to start claiming their courage from the inside to start getting that change moving. And I have certainly witnessed that taking place, and yes, repercussions happening along the way. So I'll just put my mic down, waiting to see if you're all done with this topic or if there's something more you might want to add.
I want to add something. It took me a while to really get into this topic, and just an additional angle to add, and that is the question of, is there power and control on dynamics between, for example, a facilitator who comes in, or one of us, or one of someone working with the GC approach, and those in leadership, like the work that can be done together for the organization may also be reflected in that kind of relationship and that kind of interaction. And I'm probably so aware of it because I currently have a situation where there is, I experience myself being out of balance and out of real open communication with the client. And I'm, from this current state of our relationship, I feel unable to do anything, to do much for this organization, which is my assignment for half a year. So somehow, yeah, looking at the basic relationship and working on that as a starting point, and that may also have ripple effects then for the whole project.
I thank you all for what you've contributed into that discussion, and I'll just finish this off for myself by saying when the situations where organizational health and balance uses this module and then what's happened from it has worked out wonderfully well, the formal leader has always ended up being very much on board, and we work together as a team in a very trusting relationship. It doesn't work. It has not worked for me or for our team when that is not present.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to fix whatever's happening here. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to bring us back to the agenda for today. We're working our way through it. And The next topic is also one that Birgit has brought in for us. And I'm going to bring up one more whiteboard for us.
Rachel,
yes?
Sorry for interrupting. I think that we could take our sweetest topic. She's not here. And, but still we could maybe give it a go because I think it's so related to what we just talked about. It's almost like a second part of that topic.
So would you like to talk about that now?
I think so, yes. Yes.
Okay. Well, I will bring that one up then. I don't remember exactly what she said about it, so I'm going to ask someone else to step into that role and bring this topic up at this time so that we can have some conversation around it. So I'll turn it over to all of you and see who steps forward.
I think I recall from what Shweta said, she was talking a little bit about the how is it really possible to have open communication when there is a highly hierarchical organization, or she was saying that in general organizations per se are hierarchical. So is it possible really to have open communication? That's yeah, basically what she wrote. So I think that's it. I don't know if she said anything else.
Birgit, I'm not quite sure what open communication means or what she meant by it. What I'm assuming might be meant is that within all of our processes, they're very participatory. They require people to sit in a circle and to speak up. So I think there's the question of, is it likely that people will actually speak up in the formal organization and speak up about things that maybe they've always either stayed silent about or just talked about in small clusters, but never within the hierarchical organization. And I'm aware that in some countries where there's extremely strict hierarchical rules in organizations with people who are referred to as seniors and those who are referred to as juniors, that juniors might not be willing to speak up with seniors. And so what I would say about that is, if the senior most leadership is really wanting to make a change and really wanting to have the participation of people, all people, to comment, that senior leadership has to persevere for a long time to hold steady with that as a big, big change that is countercultural. And by holding steady and constantly doing leadership development work with the other leaders to learn how important this is and to learn to hold steady. And when people have the courage to speak up, that they don't end up with repercussions because of this leadership and how it's being shown slowly, even in a steeply hierarchical organization, real participation from everybody happens. One organization that we worked with in India, after it took a couple of years, but in that organization, even people at the most junior level, like the people who served the tea or the drivers, were invited into the process. And even though the process was in English and they didn't speak English and needed translators, they started participating. They started being open, and they ended up in closing circle work really thanking for what had been possible, that they could be listened to and that their ideas were taken in by the group. That's it for me.
Just yesterday, I was talking with a friend from India, and she was talking to me about these castes, and we were, I was like so in awe of all the things that people need to do there to really be taken into, taken into account. So I think your example, Birgit, is an amazing way to say yes, it's possible, but it takes work. And even in societies as the one in India, which is it's so difficult, if that is possible, then I think it depends on the head of the organization and how open he or she is to letting this happen and to make it happen. So I think it's possible. I just think it takes work, and it takes a wonderful intention and presence of really standing up for that opportunity or that culture in the organization.
I want to emphasize the word perseverance and combine it with consistency, because it's not just about open communication. It's very much about a complete organizational transformation to allow this to happen in some organizations, many organizations even. And the leaders hold the frame for this change, and they have to persevere, and they have to be consistent. And if they fall away from the perseverance and consistency with welcoming participation and real communication from everyone, if they have a bad day or a bad week and suddenly go back to the old ways of being, the message that gets sent out throughout the organization is, this was never real, we always knew it, so now we're going to close down. So the pressure on them, the real willingness and pressure on the senior people in the hierarchy is quite intense.
It's Rachel picking up, and I was just thinking about how there's for me there's this direct correlation between the life nurturing climate of the organization and the possibility of open communication. So even if it's a steeply hierarchical organization, if there is that sense of health imbalance and if there is that sense of a life nurturing climate, it creates a nourishing foundation for open communication to happen. And how that for me then ties into needing to be so vigilant and so aware of and working with that life nurturing climate, because we don't know what people's outside climates are like. We don't know what people's outside experience of open communication is. Did they grow up in a home where open communication was welcome and warm and open and inviting, or did they grow up in a home where if they said the wrong thing there were serious repercussions, for example? And how, because we don't know what people have as their experience about communication, it doesn't even matter what you might say about open communication, you need to foster the environment where that's really possible. And, you know, Birgit was talking about that from the leadership perspective, but from the whole perspective, from the whole organization, what are the critical ingredients, regardless of hierarchy, that make open communication something that's not just possible, but a regular occurrence within an organization? So those were some of my thoughts that I wanted to add into this for consideration about what makes open communication possible. And I will put the mic back just to see if there are any final comments. I see a couple of green checks, but of course I know that those things can change once you've heard something new. So for just another moment, I'll leave it and then see what else might be percolating. Okay, that seems to be it with that topic. I am bringing us back to our agenda for indeed what is our last topic at this time, and I'm just going to grab the title of it and invite you, Birgit, to bring us into this last topic for our Achieving Organizational Health and Balance Mentoring Circle today. Over to you.
From my perspective, I don't even have that much more to say on this topic except the title, and I invite you each to say what it is that comes up for you when you think about the preciousness of a participatory approach to organizational health and balance, and the difference between that preciousness of the participatory approach is one in which external consultants are hired, come in, do a consulting report, and people just sit back and read the report and then maybe figure out some action to take. So there's this preciousness in the participatory approach. And then there's preciousness into collaborating together to make our regeneration plan. And I was just sitting with how I experience all that as very precious, with people being in on what's happening every step of the way to the extent possible. So if that introduction evokes any thoughts in you, I'd love to hear them.
I have something immediately, and it probably will be beautiful, Elizabeth, when you follow, because I want to mention something, what you said before. You said that this module allows an organization to see where they are, and then the steps need to be taken within the organization by everybody involved. So a non-participatory approach is like, to me, it's like a doctor saying someone, you should really like eat differently or exercise or sleep more or whatever. And as long as I haven't come to the conclusion that this is what I want to do, there will always be a battle, maybe a giving in out of fear or out of compliance, but there is no real, wow, I really want to do it, and I come up with all the great ways of how. And a participatory approach will have everyone acknowledge this is where we are. This is what I see where we are, and now I really want to do something about it. And from the work we're doing within the GC consultancy group, Richard has done a lot of research, and this whole topic of engagement seems to be really big, also showing up in many studies. I know that Birgit, in your latest newsletter, you've also written about it. So yeah, buy-in, engagement, in internal motivation. Yeah, just so crucial, makes such a difference. Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mariah, and thank you, Birgit. It's funny, the image that came to me immediately is like when you go to a physician, a doctor, and he says, this is what you have to do, versus going to a doctor and having him, and he has to really participate in the process, and he helps you learn how your body works and what happens when you have an unhealthy diet, or what happens when you have a healthy diet, and what happens when you exercise and what happens when you don't exercise. So just being able to understand how our body works and what's happening at a certain point in time, for me, is like these huge participatory meetings, or this participatory approach to health and balance, is that when I know how my body works and what is nurturing and what is not nurturing to my body, I will consciously choose a better way of doing things. And I think that that's the beauty of participatory approach to health and balance in organizations. When people participate and they're there because they want to be there, because they're really interested in the health and balance of the organization, it's like being heart-centered. It's like a heart-centered commitment somehow that is there in the creation of a plan, of a process, or whatever is needed to make sure that the organization is in health and balance. So that's the image that came to me. Thank you.
I also just remembered all or most of you are also aware of Psych-K, and the difference of the muscle testing, as I learned it with Psych-K, was we are testing together. And in other modalities, the testing is used as a diagnosis from outside. And I've really felt the difference of that. So I had a doctor who actually also learned Psych-K, but he like tested and did things and then said, oh, this is what this means. Or going to a health practitioner who uses muscle testing and then just not, like, I don't tell you what I'm doing so that your mind doesn't get in the way. And I know how I feel smaller on the receiving end of that. I mean, sometimes I may want to give my power away and say, please, you do it. But I really like the Psych-K muscle testing. We do this together. What are you experiencing? What intuitions do you have in every moment to have the real partnership? And I'm also aware that for some people, they may want that I go to someone who tells me what to do. They may actually really prefer it. So in one of the courses, Psych-K courses I taught years back, one woman just couldn't get to any muscle testing results the first whole day of the workshop. And I was not concerned. I knew there was something in it for her and for us. And at the end of the first day, we had a conversation. And in that, at some point, she realized, wow, if I really learn muscle testing, I cannot go to my doctor, so this doctor that was also co-organizing the workshop, I cannot go to him anymore, like right now, and give myself away to him. Right now, he's my hero. And it's like, oh, Rolf, please diagnose me, fix me. And if I really learn Psych-K for myself, I take on a different position of ownership in my life and leadership, and do I really want them? And the next day she came and she said that night she stayed up until 4 o'clock in the morning, and the whole system was in turmoil about wanting to make that step, yes or no. And so the next day she was able, she had made the shift overnight, and she was able to do the muscle testing on her own and claim ownership for her life and her well-being in a different way. Right back.
Great, thank you for those great examples. And great, all the points made. in the interest of time, and we might need to head to the closing circle, I think this is a topic that could go on, hopefully, in our hearts for some time. So, of course, if there's something you still want to say, please do. Or if you give a green check, we really could get into the closing circle. I feel complete and appreciative. Rachel, over to you.
So here we are back in our circle, and Elizabeth, I'll invite you to add yourself to the circle so that we know where you're sitting, and then we will head into our time for our closing circle for today. And I am going to turn it over to Birgit to lead us through our closing circle. So over to you to do that.
Great, Rachel. Thank you. Okay. I have participated in many mentoring circles, and some feel lighter, and some feel heavier, and some feel more intense. And this one, we had a lot of laughter at the start, and for me, it felt quite intense as we went along. It felt very like reflective and thinking and feeling into what is this, how do we work with it, what are the challenges that we face, and what do we want to do about it. I'm sure there was much more going on. I appreciated the intensity. I appreciated the points that were made. I didn't feel like as though there were, I felt like in each topic there was reflective homework to keep going on with. So that's something I certainly will continue to do. So thank you all for being here. Those who do this as self-study, I hope that you get what you need out of it. Shweta, I'm sorry that you were not able to restart again once Blackboard ran into difficulties. We enjoyed having you here for the time you were here, and I know there's a couple other people attempting to log in that couldn't. So I know we're shifting software soon. That's probably a good idea. Mariah, over to you.
Thank you, Birgit. Yes, I wasn't so conscious of it, and I agree that we started with playfulness, light laughter, and now it's more intense. I don't feel complete at all, and at the same time, I'm happy that we're ending the kind of being at the computer and talking, this pattern, and it's a beautiful ongoing topic, and I look forward to the next time we will have the opportunity to explore and co-create together around this. Thank you, as always, very much to Birgit and Rachel for holding the space and inviting us, making this mentoring circles possible. I am very grateful for that opportunity. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I love talking about these things. So what a great way to be wrapping up the week and having some conversation that I can take into my thinking over the weekend, and I'm sure into the weeks to come, and how I continue to approach doing this work. Yeah, I think that's all I care to say at this time, so I'll pass it on to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. And I feel, I don't know if it's complete or not. I feel it was, although I wasn't at the beginning, I think that the topics were great. I think they were great and really food for thought and food for reflection. So I think that's what's great about these mentoring circles. I usually leave that way. It's kind of like, yeah, we had this great conversation, but I usually leave with all these things going on still in my head and in my heart, and they, you know, until they settle in. And so that's why I feel these mentoring circles are so precious. And I really want to thank you, Rachel and Birgit, for these gifts that you give us. And thank you very much. So yeah, I'll pass the bells on to you, Birgit. Thank you.
So thank you all so much. I wish you a great weekend, and we're all percolating with this topic, and I think that slowly over the coming weeks, or maybe quickly with insights, just different things will happen for each of us that has participated in this mentoring circle in relation to this topic. So thank you for showing up, for being present, for learning with us, and hopefully we'll have a chance again soon. So have a great weekend, and hugs all around.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.